Hi, this is Nina, Morocco. I am wanting to just share some of my life with you, a little bit about how I came to quantum healing, a little bit about my life before I came to quantum healing, just to connect with you and see if it resonates with any of you out there. So, before quantum healing, I was a makeup artist. And before that, I was an actress. Um, so I did acting for a few years after I left school. I left school at 17, and because I'd been accepted with an unconditional offer to a college that did acting. So that was what I went and did, and I really enjoyed it whilst I was there. However, I am quite a sensitive soul. I'm a bit of an empath. I take on other people's energy as my own, and I didn't like dealing with the competition aspect of acting and the performing arts. If you were good at acting, you were hated. If you were bad at acting, you were hated, and you were always kind of picked apart and ridiculed. And it's just kind of how the industry is. And props to people who can have a thick enough skin to do that kind of work, but it just wasn't for me. So after a few years of that, I got into a relationship I was in for quite a few years. It was a not very good relationship. It was quite abusive. I eventually moved and took up makeup, which I enjoyed for the time being, but I kind of always knew it was a filler. It was something that I could do that was creative, that I enjoyed, but it wasn't my calling. I really enjoyed the aspect of taking time to take care of somebody and make them feel beautiful more than the aesthetic. I think it was the way people felt once I had done their makeup, which really gave me a wonderful feeling. And when you are with families on wedding days and things, there's a lot of heightened emotion and a lot of things that have come up from the past, and to be there at these quite crucial times of people's lives, I found that a lot of people would really turn to me for counsel and as someone to lean on. And I enjoyed that aspect of being there for others. I always have. And I think with the acting as well, I think there was that element of empathy, which I have. So whenever I was to take on a role of somebody else in another situation, even though I was 17 and maybe not didn't have the life experience to know exactly what some of the situations I was playing out were like, I was naturally able to put myself in the position of others. So that aspect and the caring aspect of the makeup side of it, the kind of taking care of someone and being really intimate with them, as in you are painting their face. That was the two aspects that I kind of pulled out from those career paths I've had before. And then I fell pregnant when I was 30. I was 30. And it was a really difficult pregnancy. It was totally different from what I had expected. I had always wanted to be a mum. Always wanted I had that kind of nurturing side of me where I always wanted someone to care for. And I was really excited about the prospect of being pregnant. But the actual reality of what I went through during my pregnancy, I could never have imagined it would be so bad. I had a condition called hyperemesis gravidarum, which is extreme sickness and nausea throughout pregnancy. I was sick 20 to 30 times a day. I couldn't really keep any food down. I tried every day in hopes that something would stay down. But it was, constant. And there was times early on in pregnancy, before I hit the kind of 12-week mark, where I couldn't even really keep down water. And it stayed like that for months on end. I was bedridden, and I think the only outings I really had were to go to hospital to go on a drip. And that sounds extreme, but it really was my life for about 7.5 months. It was really intense and nothing like I had expected pregnancy to be. I really missed out on the enjoyment of bringing a new life into the world, and the preparation and all these. Really, my life was trying to survive for those months. So I really felt a huge disconnect to the path I was on of becoming a mother, and it was really very difficult. So once Marnie was born, the sickness stopped instantly, which was amazing. However, the thing that happened was Marnie, after I think about 2 weeks, was unwell herself. She had quite a traumatic birth. They used forceps, and she had quite a large hole, for want of a better word, in her head from the forceps and the pressure. And this became infected, and we needed to get that looked at. And at the same time, she had a kind of rash thing that looked like a rash at the time, coming over her neck and throat. And we didn't know what that was. We thought it might be connected to the infection that she had, but it needed to be checked out. And all of a sudden, we were in the hospital and admitted, and they were telling us that she had a life-threatening condition called subglottal hemangioma, on top of a major infection throughout her whole system from this wound in her head that had gone unnoticed. Not by myself. Myself and my partner had noticed it and pointed it out to our health professionals, but they had brushed it off as not really anything to worry about, until it really was. So we were then kept in hospital for a good few days whilst they were trying to keep the infection under control. So yes, we were kept in hospital whilst they were trying to find out a way to control this infection and to figure out what was the best course of action for her subglottal hemangioma. Eventually we were moved to a bigger children's hospital. We were there for nearly a week. They had to do a scope on her. She was 2 weeks old, so she was really tiny. It was incredibly scary, having been through what I had gone through with the pregnancy and the birth, and then to have all this on top was really very, very, very scary for myself and my partner at the time. they managed to get that under control with drugs. But it was a kind of constant. We were in and out of hospital very regularly with having to keep an eye on this condition that she had. And then at 10 months old, she had an MRI scan due to the size of her head. And it was discovered that she had hydrocephalus, which is buildup of fluid on the brain. And this was due to, actually, it was due to her birth. It was due to her skull being so squeezed during her birth that actually the lower part of her brain, the cerebellum, was at the bottom of her skull, basically. So that was fairly scary, and that had stopped the flow of spinal fluid in and out of her brain. So her brain was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So once we'd had that MRI scan and they had the results, we were admitted straight away and told that she needed immediate brain surgery at 10 months old. So really that information, nothing can really prepare you for that information, that your child needs immediate brain surgery. It was really, really difficult, a really, really hard time. You just kind of go into, again, survival mode, and it's almost like my pregnancy was training for this endurance and this patience and this survival, really. So these were very difficult experiences for me. And really, once you go through these kind of traumas, something deeply changes within you. However, there are some beautiful things that come out of these experiences. I learned to love the cold. I live in Scotland, which can be fairly chilly at times. But from being in hospital wards very often and in and out, and sometimes to feel the cold on your face is just the most freeing thing there is. It makes you feel alive when everything else feels very grey. So that was something that came out of it. And the other thing that came out of it was all those tiny moments between yourself and your child. All those smiles and looks of awe and giggles and the little noises and all of that. All of those tiny wee things that maybe I would have taken for granted if we hadn't been in that position, all meant so much. And I appreciate Marnie more than I could ever imagine. So that was really something that it was a big deal for me, all of that. Very hard for myself and her father. And for about a year after that happened, all of that happened, I was frozen, for want of a better word. I was unable to leave my house. I was unable to really socialize with anyone. I certainly couldn't do any of the mummy and baby groups because my experience was so different from the others. It was hard to talk about trivial things with bringing up babies when I was going through something really, really very different. So yeah, I spent a year on my sofa, frozen. unable to really engage with the world. I don't think it was depression, because I was very sure to not allow what had happened to us to affect my daughter. So I had felt very depressed during my pregnancy. I was a bit of a mess. And I was very certain that I was going to be as okay as possible to bring up my daughter. So, yeah, my year of being frozen on the couch kind of took its toll, and I kind of got to the stage where I realized I could either allow all this to continue and go down this path of being frozen, or I could rise from it, and I could take what had happened to me and my family and use it to grow and use it to help others and use it to be of service in some way to the world. I had a dream shortly before I found BQH that I was being plugged in to these machines. I was on some kind of base, which looked, this base didn't really look like a, it didn't really look like a sci-fi base. It looked a bit more like a kind of bohemian cafe with these big machines that we were being periodically plugged into. And I woke up from that dream, and I kind of came to the conclusion that this was something to do with being called to help my energy, help raise and assist the planet in some way. And shortly after that, I was invited to join a Facebook group called The Event Is Happening, which I found quite fascinating, because there was some really interesting information coming through on it. Some information I hadn't really come across before, and I was a bit taken back by, but some of it kind of resonated, and I enjoyed seeing what people were saying about, the earth and the collective, and where things were shifting, and things like the Schumann resonance and other things. And I was quite into it. And then at some point, I realized that through all of this, I had some healing still to do from my own childhood and my own life. And I wondered how or where you started to heal that, because I didn't want to pass any of my stuff onto my child. I didn't want to pass any of that ancestral gunk onto my daughter. So I asked in this group whether or not there were ways to help you heal from childhood and young adult life traumas. And I got some wonderful responses from some really beautiful people, and I was really touched by the amount of people who reached out in support, and the offers I got from so many people. One of these offers was from a wonderful woman called Mia, who lived in Qatar and is a quantum healer who is based over there, and she's also based in Portugal. And she offered me a Beyond Quantum Healing session for free. And without even hesitating, I said yes and agreed to do this session. And it really changed everything. And it made me have a much deeper understanding of why we went through what we went through, and why my daughter went through what she went through. And from the moment I watched a video of Dolores Cannon describing quantum healing, I realized that this was something I really wanted to explore and maybe do as a practitioner. Then once I had my session, there was no doubt. That was one of the first things that I said afterwards was, I feel like I really want to learn how to do this. So I waited until my birthday, and I saved some money. And 2 days after my birthday, I bought the BQH course, and that was it. I just loved it. I just loved learning it, and it was a joy. It was such a joy to learn, and it was the first time in such a long time I had something in my life that made me tick, and that made that childlike wonder within me come to the surface and feel really excited about life again, and feel like I could really give back to people who are struggling, and so this was really how I came to BQH. I loved learning the whole process, and now I am a practitioner, and I really feel like I feel like I've come to terms with what happened completely, and I feel like I can really empathize and bring a lot of my own understanding and love to people who have maybe gone through or had difficult experiences of any kind, be them medical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. So yeah, that really led me on this journey to becoming a quantum healer, and here I am. I absolutely adore this work, and I hope that you have enjoyed finding it a little bit more out about me, and how I came to this work. And it really, there was a choice that I could make at the end of a really difficult time, and it was, the choice was either I could allow it to let me continue on this path of being frozen and being scared, or really allow it for me to rise and to lift, and use what had happened to me to really help and connect with others. So that was that was the thing I chose, and here I am. So if anybody has watched this video and they feel a connection, or they feel like they would like to get in touch with me, you can do so. My website is www.rafaelasoulsessions.com. I'll put the link in the description, and I will put my other links in there. I have a Facebook by the same name. If you've enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up, and hey, you can share it as well if you want. If there's anybody out there who has any of these issues or has been through this and you feel it might help them just by hearing somebody else's experience, then feel free to share it. And yes, if you want to reach out to me, then please do so. I am here to help and help shift this earth to where it needs to be. And I thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourself. Big love, and bye.